morning, good afternoon, guys. We're back for another Geek Tavern. As always, it's me, Shawn, and I'm joined by Mike.
Yo.
And Aaron.
Hey, yo.
And I was watching HBO Max, and I was just like bored of what I was watching, so I tried to look up something. And there's this cartoon from Cartoon Network called Infinity Train. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the pilot of it.
I've never heard of this.
It was like,
Me neither.
there was a pilot that they came out with, and then Cartoon Network saw it, and they ordered like 2 seasons of it, and it's really good. It's like it's kind of like an anthology series. It's like a sci-fi type of thing. I watched all of it in one day. They're like 17-minute episodes, 15-minute episodes.
So it's kind of like Looney Tunes. Almost.
Yeah, kind of. So, I mean, if you ever don't have anything to watch, I recommend watching that because it was really good.
So it's not Thanos in a conductor hat that has the Infinity
No.
Stones on it?
No, it is not.
Okay. Well.
You really like that one.
Yeah.
We all sat down and watched Rogue One. Rewatched it.
Well, we didn't
unplanned.
Yeah. I was gonna say we didn't consciously go, let's watch Rogue One. It just was on, or the Phantom Menace was on, and we just sat there and we're like, oh, Rogue One.
Yeah.
And we just sat through it.
Rogue One just kind of happened before our eyes.
we caught the tail end.
And then we're like, yeah, you know what? It's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's all right.
Other than that, I don't think I've really seen anything.
No, I don't think that I've watched anything aside from what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's mine too. Like,
all right. Well, we also all sat down and watched for the first time, in my instance,
Mine too.
The Colin Farrell. Well, the whole way through, really for me, but the Colin Farrell Total Recall. And some of us watched the old Total Recall with Arnold for the first time, too.
that was me.
So, yeah, I mean, we can talk about those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the Total Recall, this came out in 2012, I believe. Is that what the back of the box says?
Yes, copyright 2012.
Yeah, so this came out in 2012, and it's it says that it's based on the book We'll Remember It For You Wholesale by Philip K. Dick. But it is pretty much a remake to the 1990 Paul Verhoeven film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. In my opinion, this movie being a remake, because I think there was a slew of a couple years where remakes of really classic, iconic movies came out, and this kicked it off, because then there was RoboCop, and I really didn't care much for RoboCop at all.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that one.
But this is one of those instances where I really enjoyed the remake. Not as much as I enjoy the original, but I thoroughly enjoyed the remake. I think that it was well done.
Yeah.
The action scenes were not like Fast and Furious,
Right.
ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
Except for the very first one. That one was a little jarring. With like the camera swooping around the room.
Well, yeah,
that was
that was more of a camera filmography. Well, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Cinematographer choice or whatever.
Yeah,
well, it was definitely the director saying, "Hey, I want to do this crazy thing." And then,
like the action. What I was trying to say was the action itself wasn't jarring.
Right.
The camera.
Yeah.
The camera was.
Yeah, that was a bad choice.
We also watched the director's cut as well.
Extended.
Yes, so it has the extended with Ethan Hawke. It has the extended parts with him.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why they would remove it. I thought that stuff was like
actually
the better part.
Yeah,
the better parts of the movie is the Ethan Hawke. I'm like, maybe it's confusing because they only set it up like briefly in the very beginning with Ethan Hawke's character.
It only adds the fact that he had reconstructive surgery, right?
Well, yeah.
Is that all it really adds?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming that
he wiped his memories and basically reconfigured him into a new
so like
person.
people wouldn't recognize
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, which like you go through all that trouble, why not just kill him? Like,
yeah,
he wanted to use them. Cohagen wanted to use them.
Yeah, but get another mole to, infiltrate the resistance. Don't go through all of this spending a couple $1 million on reconstructing your best agent's face and everything.
But yeah, I'm assuming that the scenes where it's like the exposition dump where it's like his former self telling him what happened and his involvement with the resistance, I'm guessing that was just Colin Farrell in the theatrical version.
I guess. I would assume it was...
That's how I remember it. Like I said, it's been a while since
I would assume it's like... and you know what? They probably took it out because Ethan Hawke probably made some kind of like negotiation where he was like, well, if you're going to use my scenes, I'm getting paid this much. And if they were just like, well, we're going to pay you for what you did, but probably not going to use it in the theatrical cut because then we're going to have to give you money. Because he probably wanted like royalties from that.
That stuff happens all the time
billed.
where they cut a small character out or whatever.
Who's played by like a pretty decent actor.
Like Mary Jane was supposed to be in.
Yeah, Shailene Woodley was supposed to be in that. But I would assume that it was more like the Total Recall with Arnold, where he opens up like the laptop case and it's him talking to himself, and he's like, "You're not you, you're me," and he's like, "No shit," you know, like, all that stuff. Like,
right? Yeah.
Which I'm just assuming it would be Colin Farrell talking to himself.
If I remember correctly, that's basically what it was. It's like, yeah, you're me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I liked it. The one thing that I wish they would have done more is kind of like probe the question of the audience: is it a recall or is it not? Well, they kind of do that at the very end of the movie, but they only really introduce it for the first time whenever he is having that conversation with Harry.
Yeah, and I was saying to Mike, I just rewatched Total Recall again the other night. And I said to him that that's one thing that this remake didn't do. There are little things that they precede Doug getting his implant. There are just little things that side characters say before they put him under that tip you off that maybe this is all just in his imagination. One of them being when the doctors are setting him in the chair and they're asking him questions, the one guy hands the lady a disc and she goes, "Oh, blue sky on Mars. That must be new." And then what happens at the end? He turns on the reactor, which creates an atmosphere for Mars, and there's blue sky. So I'm like, watching that, I'm like, I'm like, there are a lot of things in here where it's like, you really don't know. Yeah. You really don't know. Even at the end of the movie, you're like, everything that because everything that like Bob McClane tells him, he's like, hey, you're a secret agent, you're deep undercover, the best part is at the end of the day, you save the world, you get the girl, and everything's good. And I'm like, that all happens. It all happens exactly like they tell him it's going to happen. Yeah. And then, like, the other stuff is when they're building the girl in the simulation, it's Melina. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, like, you really, really don't know. And this movie kind of almost tells you it's all a recall. Right. At the very, very end. Yeah, where he doesn't have his tattoo that they mark before they inject or implant you. Because it is a lasered tattoo, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So they know that he was a patient, but he doesn't have that at the end, and you're almost like, oh, this is all recall. But the main difference in this movie is there's no Mars stuff. Nothing takes place on Mars, which is fine because the fall is a very interesting plot point. I really like that. That was really cool. Yeah. Because knowing that none of this takes place with Mars, which is something that I really like in the original, after watching it, I was like, wow, I was like, that was actually pretty cool. You know, they have the robotic police force that they're helping build and everything for a military invasion. Yeah. Bryan Cranston for the 5 minutes that he's probably in this movie as much as he was in Godzilla. But I mean, it's fine. Like, I wanted more of him in Godzilla, but he was just in enough to establish
he does have a fight scene.
He does. That's right. At the very end.
I mean, that's more than anything he did in Godzilla.
Well, that's true. But one of the other differences is Laurie kind of takes on two characters in this movie, where she becomes the Richter character, who was Michael Ironside in the first one, along with Laurie, right? Who in the first one was she married to Richter, or were they just like a couple?
I don't know.
I think they were just a couple.
I
don't think they really come out and say.
No, but they just kind of combined those two characters Laurie and Richter,
Yeah.
which was fine. I was like, you don't need another Richter.
Yeah,
If
that was
if
the
you
thing
have
in
her
the
playing
80s.
that- yeah.
You know, God forbid that, you know, the woman's the
Well, and
big bad.
and you
kinda.
can't. Well, Laurie.
Part of the big bad.
Laurie in the original held her own.
Yeah,
She
a little
fought
bit.
Arnold for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, well, Michael Ironside. You can't go wrong with Michael Ironside. Him as Richter, like any character that he
He
played,
looks oddly like Jack Nicholson.
he does. He does.
Like, even like when he gets angry or a certain emotion, I can't remember exactly what all, but like his face looks like him.
Yeah.
And then it kind of sounds like him at times too.
Yeah. Yeah, he especially in Total Recall, he's a very intimidating, like that dead stare. Like it almost made me think like if he was even human,
Yeah,
or not, because like Cohagen always says to him, he's like, "You're not supposed to think, you idiot." He's like, "You do what I tell you to do," and I was like, is he like some kind of like replicant or something that they built and it's just never fleshed out upon? But then I'm just like, nah, he's just a dude. Because you find out at the end when his arms get ripped off that he's just a dude.
Right.
But
about that.
But I mean, I really enjoyed the remake. But Mike, you watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger one for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as to your take on it.
I can't.
This is one of my favorite. I mean, I love all Paul Verhoeven's movies, but this is one of my favorites.
I mean, I can't tell you which one I even like more.
Yeah.
But like, and that's not a dig at either one. I just really like both of them.
Yeah, they're great. They're really good stories.
For honestly, for separate reasons. Now knowing what the original's like, I like the fact that they don't go to Mars in the second one. Like, I like what they changed for that. But like the original, it's really cool to see what they thought Mars would be like. You know, or whatever. My favorite thing, and it's one of those 80s movies
tropes
or the way that they did not CG, because it wasn't CG, but like when their faces would swell because they were in the like that or like the little dude on the belly. Yeah. Like that animatronic stuff.
And fun fact,
it looks terrible, but I love it.
All that stuff was done by the special effects supervisor from the movie The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, Rob Bottin. He did all those puppets and everything. One part that was missing from this remake, Benny, the taxi cab driver.
Oh yeah.
I was like, damn. I was like, we're not gonna get a Benny character, and there wasn't a Benny character.
I did like Benny.
And Arnold's classic one-liners. Screw you! When he sticks the drill through and kills Benny in the.
I didn't like that he actually turned completely. I was waiting for him to when he turned to bad or whatever. I was waiting for him to like turn back because it didn't line up with what he wanted.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to turn back, but then he comes to attack again.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that movie's a wild ride.
Yeah.
And I enjoy. That's one thing about that.
It's now one of my favorite Arnold movies.
Right? And I think one thing that was that's a really big part of that movie for me is it mixes all the action along with the sci-fi really well, but it has a lot of interesting design to it. Like you hear about like, oh, they found artifacts in the Great Pyramid of Mars or whatever. And then it's later, like, you think that's just a passing thing. Like, you know, they're just talking about, oh, you know, it's part of the mining operation. Then you find out that there's a whole big reactor thing there. Yeah. And that the whole point of it is they have to get there and activate the reactor so that there can be an atmosphere and all that. And I'm like, wow, like, it's like genius, like, the way that they wrote that out. Because I don't think any of that was in the original story. Like, the book that was written. Mars had nothing to do with it, anything like that.
One of my favorite things in the Arnold one, when he finds that suitcase, or not finds, but gets that suitcase, and he finds that thing that like mirrors him.
Oh, the hologram projector. Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's weird. But then it's just long enough that you completely forget about it.
Yeah.
So when he actually uses it later, and like he's surrounded by all those guards, and they shoot at him, I'm like, how the fuck's he getting out of this one?
Yeah.
You know?
No, and then that's one of my favorite things is after he does that, and then he kills those guys, and then he like walks over, and there are two guys that come up next to him, and he goes, "Haha, you probably think this is the real Quaid. It is." And then he just like turns and shoots them. I was like, "That's great."
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things. Gadgets or whatever in that movie.
Oh, so I was telling Shawn about this. I did some reading up on Total Recall because we were talking about the Colin Farrell one, and I said before we had watched it that I was reading up on it because we had talked about it briefly. Mm-hmm. And so Total Recall, the rights for that movie went to like 3 different studios. It went through Joel Silverstein, he produced Predator. I think he also produced Commando. And it went through it was Dino De Laurentiis who directed the other movies, produced the other movies that we're going to talk about. Mm. And it went through one other studio, and they lost the rights to it. So Arnold had contacted Studio Canal and Carolco Studios, who produced the first one, and convinced them to buy up the property for $3 million. So he landed this whole thing, and they gave him like an unprecedented amount of control over the movie. Yeah. So he could like veto producers. He got to pick the director. Like he didn't produce the movie. He's not listed as a producer or anything. But I guess they were just so goddamn happy that he had scored this that they just gave him almost complete control. And he actually went and got Paul Verhoeven and asked him to direct this because Arnold was originally considered for the role of RoboCop.
Right.
And I think he couldn't do it because he was doing Predator.
I don't think, just a tangent here, I don't think that him as RoboCop would be very good.
No,
because
Peter Weller's
the whole point of... I feel like the whole point of RoboCop is like Peter Weller is like a scrawny guy looking, and then he's transformed into a robot, machine, robot, like a police officer. Yeah, it just wouldn't work if hulking Arnold was just like, and then gunned like down. Mr. Freeze. Yeah, and then he's just like, I don't think that would work.
No. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
No, and but Arnold liked RoboCop so much that he contacted Paul, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to come direct this movie?" So, like, it all fell together just because of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was like, that's so weird. Like, like I never knew that he just, like, secured all of this so that movie could happen. And I was like, wow, it's really cool.
Do we know where Total Recall falls, like, on Arnold's, like, acting credits? Like, is it far into his acting career?
About,
because I thought he was awesome.
I would say it was about maybe 10 plus years, like maybe 15 into his acting career. Because I know he didn't start like acting until like after 1975, and even then it was just small roles. Okay. Because the movie that we're gonna talk about is his first big role, big first role. Yeah. And then that just, carried him to even more acting roles, which I mean, like, nobody... Listen, Arnold's good at what he does. Nobody hires him for acting, though. Right. They're just like, hey, we need Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I think Total Recall is a good example for the fact that he has an ability to act. Yeah. I think.
No, to me, it's one of his better... He's in an action role, but it's not as over the top like Commando. He's not painting himself up on a shoreline and grabbing a rocket launcher and walking through a compound. Right, and he seems like a normal dude. People. Yeah, he just seems like a confused guy who's like, "Hey, something weird's going on." Here.
Unlike, I don't know, what's it? Last Action Hero. I mean, obviously that one's supposed to be way over the top, but. Yeah, he just seems like a normal guy.
Commando's over the top. I've never. That's a good one. It's a good one if you haven't watched it. Yeah. But
there's probably a lot that I haven't watched.
There's but I mean, like, it's just one of those. We need Arnold Schwarzenegger. Right. Now we need The Rock. You know, The Rock kind of took over Arnold's role as. Because I heard somebody else say it too, and I was like, I don't think that The Rock is a bad actor, but they're like, nobody hires him to do Shakespeare or anything like that. And I'm like, yeah.
I think he could, though.
Oh, he probably could. If Arnold tried hard enough.
I mean, just from knowing him from wrestling, like, that's essentially acting.
Yeah.
And he could do probably anything, I think. Yeah. But anyway.
I like a lot of the Easter eggs that are in the Colin Farrell Total Recall.
2 weeks.
Yeah, like that woman that looks exactly like Dana. And then...
I mean, it's identical. From watching that one and then going back and watching that one, identical.
Yeah.
Yeah. She
like, that's clearly who that is.
Yeah.
Maybe not the same woman, actress, but...
Yeah, and then, among other things, but... Oh, we saw a light cycle.
Yeah, there was the light cycle, and there was something else, too.
Like, the light cycle was like 5 times.
Yeah, because you just kept seeing that. But, what was it?
Maybe that robot getting its arm cut off by the elevator.
Yeah, on the elevator. Or as they're going, like, through the different elevator shafts.
Oh, right.
And the robot's holding on and gets its arm severed off. And I was like, is that an Easter egg for Richter getting his arms ripped off? And then I made the joke when we were watching it. I was like, do you ever think that Richter may be Ratchet from Starship Troopers? And then I was like, oh wait, he's missing... I was like, Richter's missing both arms, not one.
Yeah.
And he just becomes a high school history teacher.
Oh, well. Do we have more praise for the movie?
I give it all my praise. I love the original. I really enjoyed the remake. It's one of the very few remakes that I can say... live up pretty much to the original. They took their creative liberties, but all in all, it was good.
I mean, we didn't really plan this, but do we want to rate each one of them?
Sure.
I mean, because we're not going to probably come back to it as a suggestion.
Yeah, now that we've
I haven't watched the Arnold version in a while, so...
Okay.
All right, well, watch it, and then you can edit in your your rating into it.
Yeah, just like just be so bizarre, and I rate it, and it's like up close to the microphone. 5 out of
7. It's just real quiet. Yeah. 7.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could skip that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say like 7 out of 10 for the Colin Farrell one. I really enjoyed it. I think it looks great too.
It does,
especially the sequences on the fall. I think those are like fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fall is just something that, like, I was like, damn, that's a really good plot device,
yeah.
You know?
I
thought those were really cool.
So I'd probably give the Arnold one, I'd give it a 7. Yeah, I'd give them both a 7. Let's just go with that, because, like I said, I don't know which one. I haven't watched either of them enough to be like, okay, that one's slightly better, or this one is. So right now, I'm just gonna equal it out.
I gotta give the Arnold one a 9.
Okay.
For me, it's pretty.
I mean, it's not
it's pretty damn near. Like, it's a movie that I could watch all the time. Now that it's on Netflix, like I think I've watched it like 3 times since it has been on.
I mean,
just because I can rewatch that movie all the time. Nothing ever gets old in it. It keeps me captivated. I just don't like. I'll give that one a 9. And I'll give the Colin Farrell a 7.5.
Okay.
It almost there's just something about Paul Verhoeven's movies that just take it slightly up, but the Colin Farrell one is still up there.
Who directed the Colin Farrell one?
I remember seeing the name, but I don't.
At the very end? Oh yeah, Len Wiseman. I don't know who that is.
Never heard of him. Or her. I don't know. I'm not gonna...
Well, that was a pretty nice discussion.
That was our recall of Total Recall.
Yes. But we have...
Recall, a retrospective to Total Recall.
Oh, I'll cut this out, but he's the director of the Underworld movies.
That's why Kate Beckinsale's in there.
Yeah.
That makes so much more sense.
You don't have to edit that out.
Yeah, remember I made that joke? I was like, she thinks she's in an underworld.
Well, no wonder she thinks that.
Yeah, because the director was probably like, do what you did in the last movie.
I gotta ask him this weekend. I'm going to my buddies this weekend. I think I told you guys, but I'm pretty sure he really likes the Underworld movies. I remember him watching them all the time in college, but I gotta double check with that.
I mean, I'm sure they're fun.
I don't know.
Well, the first one, maybe.
Anyway.
There's like 6 of them, isn't there?
But I don't know.
Yeah, there are a ton.
But almost as much as the Fast and the Furious.
I love those movies.
We have two recommended films that all of us watch. And I'll just hand it over to Aaron because there is.
I was going to do Mako's whole thing,
yeah.
but I don't have it memorized. So I'll just tell you about the times of high adventure. Okay, so my recommendation
might have been the best part
for this week
Yeah, it was great.
were 2 movies that I had never seen. And it's a nice little segue because we were just talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
In not only right now, but also in the last reviews. I suggested Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer. Conan was created by author Robert E. Howard in 1932. That premiered in a pulp magazine called Weird Tales. And Conan was a Sumerian during the Hyborian Age, and Robert E. Howard is considered one of the fathers of the sword and sorcery literature and characters like that. So you thank him for your D&D campaigns, along with J.R.R. Tolkien.
I really didn't know any of that.
Yeah. So it's a nice little background on Conan, because it gives you the whole layout of when it's supposed to take place.
So what is that in relation to the comic series?
The comic
Just an
series is just
adaptation?
kind of adaptations of his stories.
Okay.
Because he continued to write all these different stories with Conan and all the different villains that we'll talk about.
I was not aware that he had that much of a past.
Oh yeah,
Like that's almost like Batman. Like
yeah,
like
all the way back to the 30s.
yeah.
And I mean, he's a well-renowned character. You say Conan, and somebody will probably say O'Brien, but
Right.
I mean, they're
Every time I typed it into
yeah.
Google, I was like, Conan.
But yeah, I mean, there's so we'll dive right into this movie, the first movie, Conan the Barbarian. Arnold Schwarzenegger stars in the original action-packed epic adventure Conan the Barbarian. Following his parents' savage murder, young Conan Schwarzenegger is captured by the cold-blooded Thulsa Doom, played by James Earl Jones, and spends the next 15 years in agony, first chained to the Wheel of Pain. That's what that's called. I never... They never gave... Years. He's got the Tree of Woe and the Wheel of Pain.
Yeah. So he's supposed to be like 20 at the end of that sequence.
And then enslaved as a pit fighter. Rather than allowing his brutal fate to conquer him, Conan builds an incomparable body and an indomitable spirit, both of which he needs when he suddenly finds himself a free man. Aided by his companions Subotai, the Mongol, Jerry Lopez, and Valeria, Queen of Thieves, Sandal Bergman, Conan sets out to solve the riddle of steel, seize ultimate power, and finally take revenge on the warlord who killed his family. So let's talk about Conan the Barbarian.
I thought it was good. It was a little long, though. I feel like it could be shortened by like 15 minutes and it would be much better.
Yeah, I would say that's a good mark. 20 minutes.
Like the beginning scene where his dad is talking to him about their religion and stuff. It's important, but I don't know. I don't know if that's what you would cut out or if you...
No, you cut out all the gratuitous sex.
Oh, there is a lot of sex.
Yeah. Cut that out.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Like, you could
I want to see Arnold lop people's heads off.
I was very taken back because I didn't know anything about this movie. Not that I have anything against sex scenes or whatever, like,
No, it's fine when you have one.
Yeah.
It's like Terminator.
But that first one was very jarring, I thought.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it goes nowhere.
Oh, with the witch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes nowhere. I'm like...
I guess maybe it's just to show his strength because he kind of throws her into the fire.
I guess.
But like, was
that the first one, or was he giving that woman...
Oh, well, I don't think they had a sex scene, but that was...
Okay.
That would have been the first if there was.
He kind of has a Hercules vibe to him.
Yeah.
Like, his story in this movie, it doesn't. Like, I'll just lay that out. It doesn't, but it kind of has the same feel. Like, it's just this hero on his journey and all that. Except he punches a camel. I don't remember Hercules punching a camel.
Yeah.
I told my bass player that we were reviewing these movies, because I don't know if he listens, but hey, Billy, if you are. But he's like, my favorite part is when he punches the camel.
And he, like, I don't know if Arnold actually punched it, but it, like, drops.
Yeah, I think that he probably hit it. I don't know if he, like, put his all into it, but I think he definitely hit it.
Like, if that was a real one, like...
Yeah. You can't...
That takes a lot, because...
You also can't put no animals were harmed in the making of this movie.
Right. So, yeah, I don't know, but... I mean, I don't know if a camel is anywhere close to a cow, because I've gotten mad at cows and punched them. They don't care. So I mean, it is Arnold, so I don't know, but
yeah,
I assume a camel would have almost as good a skull structure as a cow. I don't know.
I thought that the fight sequences at the very beginning, when Tulsa Doom comes in and like kills their entire village, I thought that looked pretty terrible. Like it looked really silly.
Some of the way that they were swinging,
they're just kind of like bonking each other.
Yeah,
and it's not like.
And the one guy has the Harley Quinn hammer.
Yeah, it does get better.
He has
though.
that in there, doesn't he?
Yeah. It does. The fights get better.
No, it was kind of wonky. Like you could tell that they were just kind of savage type of like the barbarians were more civilized than Tulsa Doom's like guys.
Yeah,
because they're just like going through and just like trying to kill people with whatever they can. And I was like, these guys just kind of suck.
Doom brings it up later, but he says when he was younger, like that, he was only searching for steel.
Yeah.
So I think that's all he wanted was Conan's father's sword. Because I guess, I don't know, it's renowned or something. It just looks nice. I guess that's why.
Yeah. I mean, it is a nice sword.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, so Thulsa Doom shows up and then uses like his trance on Conan's mom to get her to drop the sword. And then...
Oh, I didn't know that's what was happening.
Yeah, I thought she just dropped it.
He used like some kind of trance on her instead.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess.
And then she drops the sword, and then Thulsa Doom turns around like he's gonna leave, and then just whips around and lops Conan's mom's head off.
Which I was like, that's the kind of movie I'm in for.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was something else. Like, and I said to Shawn, I was like, do you think Dino De Laurentiis was like, hey, James, I heard you got to play a really good villain, but you were never seen on screen. Want to play the villain? Want to play the black armored villain in my movie?
Then I thought that him pushing that wheel, like the montage of him eventually pushing it by himself was pretty good. I know what you could cut out though. His gladiators pit scenes.
Oh yeah, the pit fighter stuff wasn't really
like you could take that stuff out, and I think that would free up a little bit of time.
Maybe one.
Yeah, just have like Mako explain what has happened. I mean, he basically does over that whole scene anyway. But...
Yeah.
Oh, and I liked the part where he like knocks this rust off of the sword. It was like so stupid. He like picks up a sword and it's rusted like the whole way down, and he just goes ding and knocks the entire like all the rust off.
It's automatically sharp.
Yeah, that was pretty stupid.
It's sharp and like all the oxidization on the hilt.
Like once he comes outside, it's like pristine.
Yeah,
like...
yeah. It's got its like gold plating and everything, and I'm like, wow. And all the wrap on the sword was just completely like intact, even though it had been underground for thousands of years, presumably.
I like the side characters though. Subutai and I mean Valeria was fine, but I liked Subutai and Mako a lot. And
who doesn't like Mako?
Yeah, the wizard. He doesn't have. Well, he has a name in the second
Akira.
movie, but yeah. Well, they don't mention it in the first. The scene where they go into the Tower of Doom, is that what it is?
The first tower?
Yeah. That was pretty good.
Yeah, where they kill the giant snake, which I still... Mikey...
Looked pretty good.
You haven't watched the King Kong that you bought yet, have you?
No.
Okay, that is the same Dino De Laurentiis. I want you to look closely because Kong fights a snake in that movie. It's the only monster that he fights. But I want you to look too and tell me if you think it's the same puppet that they just reused in Conan. Because,
probably is.
Because I'm looking at that snake and I'm like, that looks oddly familiar. And I think it's the same puppet.
I wonder if a Google search would answer that.
Probably. I'll have to check here.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It did look good though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the
Like
snake,
even when they cut the head off, like it,
yeah, like Conan, like he doesn't even give the snake like a moment to even attack. He just spears it up through the mouth, and then Subutai like launches like 17 arrows into its head and pins it to the wall so Conan can chop its head off.
Yeah,
I was like, holy crap. And then that woman falls in and just like breaks her back because the snake's not there to eat her. And she just starts screaming and they're like, oh, no, he killed the snake. And then Conan goes on his Indiana Jones-esque mission to go to the Mountain of Doom and does like his Indiana Jones shtick where he tricks some guy into following him and then he beats the shit out of him and takes his uniform to like blend in and
that was dumb.
And then he gets found out by I think it's two of the riders.
Yeah.
And
well, he has the eye of the serpent. Or he has that
that like jade amulet that he gave to one of the guys, and he's like, yeah, go on in. And then he like goes and tells somebody, he's like, hey, aren't we missing this from the tower? And they're like, oh yeah, it's that guy. So then they go and find him.
Well, we forgot. We skipped over the part where they got commissioned by the king to go save his daughter.
Oh, right. King Osric, played by Max von Sydow.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of things that this movie has that are well done. King Osric's one of the best. I wish that he had been in the movie more.
Yeah, he's in it very briefly.
Yeah, but Max von Sydow, as he does in every movie, gives it his all. Doesn't matter what. And I think Dino had him in it just because he likes Max von Sydow so much. Max von Sydow played Emperor Ming in Flash Gordon, and I think he just likes Max von Sydow, so he just like, kept having him come back to do stuff. But and he commissions them to get his daughter back from Thulsa Doom, and she's crazy.
Yeah,
she's insane.
Well, she's
brainwashed.
Been a part of the cult, yeah. So,
and did we forget to mention that Thulsa Doom runs a snake cult? I know we mentioned snakes, but he is all about snakes.
Yeah, I don't know the origin of that, but
Samuel L. Jackson would be very tired.
They had the whenever Conan gets captured, him and Thulsa Doom have a conversation, but
which is a really good scene, by the way.
They don't really bring up his affiliation with snakes.
No,
which
is fine. Like I don't need to know anything else other than what happens in another scene that we'll get to, and then I know everything that I need to know at that point.
Right.
About the special effects supervisor and all that. But let's talk about that scene a little bit where Conan is brought before Thulsa Doom, and Thulsa Doom is talking to him about how he would never be anything if it wasn't for him and all that. And then he talks to Conan about the riddle of steel. And Conan already knows from what his father told him that the riddle of steel is you cannot trust man, woman, or beast. All you can trust is your sword. And Thulsa Doom gives him the little notion of, are you sure about that? Because he convinces one of his cult girls to jump off of like a 5-story high cliff and just drop to her death. And he turns and he says, flesh is stronger than steel. He said, what is steel compared to the hand that wields it? And that's a really good scene because he starts to like, you think he might be twisting Conan's like perception.
Yeah.
Like, man, maybe this dude is as powerful as like they all claim. Because he just like, he could just do this shit. Like, he's just all powerful. And it makes him a great villain. Like, Thulsa Doom is a really good villain.
Do you think that was him using his wizard tricks, or that it was
I genuinely think that he is just that type of cult leader that they are willing to fall on a sword for him at a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
And I think that's what makes that scene so great, is he literally was just like, and then they're just like, okay, and just died. Right. And I'm like, wow, like, this dude has these people, like, hooked. And it's not like a cult leader who's offering them some kind of divine whatever. He's just like, follow me, you idiots. Like, ravage villages for me. And they're just like, yes, sir. And then they just do it.
Yeah.
Like, he just has the power at his disposal. Which, like I said, that just makes him... Like, I don't need to know a backstory or anything. He's just a good villain.
Yeah.
He's all around just a good villain. Like, he tries to twist the hero. He doesn't... And it's James Earl Jones.
Right.
I mean, he just plays it so well that you can't even, like, argue with it. You can't even, like, look at it and just go, he's all right. It's just, no, he gives it his all. He gives it everything he has. So Conan is then crucified to the Tree of Woe.
Yeah.
Where he is almost eaten alive by vultures.
That was an interesting... He, like, plays dead, and then he, like, bites the neck off the vulture.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And he killed it, too.
Yeah, he killed it. I guess that was, like... I don't know if he was doing that to, like, just get it out of his way, or if he was doing that to, like, try and survive. Like,
I think he was trying to, and then he, like, dropped it because he couldn't, like, do anything with it. But there's a nice little sequence in this where it's been, like, a week or so, and Conan's up there crucified to the tree, and he looks off in the desert and sees Subutai running down like a sand dune towards him. And he like starts to laugh because he thinks he's coming to save him. And then he like puts his head down and passes out. And then we as the audience see that there's nothing there. And I'm like, oh, it's a mirage. And then we see him come up over the sand dune in the foreground. I'm like, oh, it's not. I'm like, he's here to save him. And then Subutai saves him, but it's already too late. They can't save Conan. He slips like into a death-like stasis. And then Valeria and Subutai bring Conan to Akiro, who says that there is something that he can do, but they'll have to fight to bring Conan back. That they have to fight off these spirits, and then Valeria makes a promise that she would pay the gods back to bring Conan back, and they successfully resurrect Conan.
The ghosts in that scene look pretty good too.
Yeah, they were animated, like they were like drawn animation, but they were done very well. It was a really cool effect for the time. It preceded like Ghostbusters and Poltergeist.
Yeah.
So I mean that was a really cool effect. Like that they
like you could tell that they were just kind of like waving at nothing when they were filming. But like I think it.
But the way
really
the animators drew it in, like it filled in those cracks quite nicely. So they bring Conan back. He's better than ever before, and he's now full on revenge mode. He doesn't give a shit who he has to kill. He wants Tulsa Doom dead. And so they go back to Mount Doom, or is that what it's called?
I guess. Yeah.
I think it's like Doom Mountain or Splash Mountain or something. I don't know. But they go back there and they find this huge orgy going.
Yeah, that's so fucking weird.
And then the two main riders who were in the Riders of Doom. One has the Harley Quinn mallet, and the other one does he have a sword?
Just like a sword,
yeah. And Conan has to fight them, and they're like all the people at this orgy are eating this like green human stew that has like hands and shit in it. And there's a giant cauldron at the top of like the staircase leading down to like this pillar. And Conan, by himself, like, lifts it and just, like, dumps it, and it rolls down and cracks the pillar. Then they get into a big fight with all of it and everything, and neither of the riders die at that point.
No, they both die later. But the The scene where his face is like, that's when he turns into the snake. Tulsa Doom does.
Oh, that's right, at the orgy thing, yeah.
And it's like so bizarre.
It's so poorly edited.
It's
because...
that's another thing that happens. It's like they kind of hint at something that's going to happen,
and then they cut away the effect or something.
They don't know the in between, and then they just cut back and it's done.
Yeah,
like that happened with him morphing into the snake.
Yeah,
because his like face was like pushing out.
Yeah, it starts to like American Werewolf in London, and then they just
cuts away, and then it cuts back, and he's just
a snake.
He's just full snake.
Oh, I get like his arms.
No. Yeah, his arms go in, but like you see his face like still starting to bulge. But then they come back and he's just a snake.
Yeah.
But not a snake like it shows later on.
Yeah.
He's just a man snake, like a snake the size of a man.
Yeah.
With his hat on and everything.
Yeah.
And he's just like looking, and then they cut back and then it's just a snake like slithering around.
Yeah. It does that a couple other times. When the first time when the original snake was like coming to life, you could see it moving and you're like, oh, and then it just like is huge snake there. And then at the end of the movie when Conan lights the pillar or the mountain on fire, it like cuts up and it's like, oh, it's a little fire, and then it cuts away and then it cuts back and it's like this inferno
that's right
happening.
That's right.
It's just like, oh, well, we don't have time or we don't want to wait sitting here.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like they were like, hey, Dino, it's going to cost like another $50,000 for us to do this effect. Said it's the cut. No, cut it. Just switch the Snake Man. Like, okay. You say so. But yeah, there are a lot of like edits that are done so poorly that they just have to cut back and you're like, what? Wait, what? Like I saw that face morph and I was like, oh, what's going on here? And it made me uncomfortable because the effect is like weird looking.
Yeah. I was like,
and it just happens, and then I'm like, okay, and then they cut to something else, and then they just cut back and
he's a dog or something.
Yeah, like, and then he just cuts back and he's a snake. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it was fucking
what is going on? So then Conan fights all those guys, and then they escape to leave. And Tulsa Doom takes like a snake out of his bag of snakes or whatever and like strokes it and turns it into an arrow and then tells it to seek. And then he shoots Valeria with it and she gets hit and it goes like through her and they pull the snake out and then she says that she promised the gods that she'd pay them to have Conan live. So they have a grand old funeral for her where Conan lights the pyre and it goes up in a blazing inferno. And there's a nice little scene there with Subutai where he's crying and Akira asks him, he says, why are you crying? And he says he is Conan the Cimmerian. He says he will not cry, so I cry for him. And I'm like, you realize that these characters just met like not too long ago.
I think that there was a montage where they were working with each other like for quite a while.
Okay,
so I think that they're familiar enough.
It kind of like went a little too quick where I was like, but I was like, wow, I was like, they really formed a really good friendship.
Yeah,
from that, which is completely thrown out, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But so after Valeria dies, Conan now has even more drive to kill Tulsa.
Well, they have liberated the queen as well. So then Tulsa Doom's agents are motivated to go and find them.
Yes.
And I like that one scene whenever they're like home aloneing, getting ready for them to show up, and I think that Subutai says something. It's like 2 against however many, they'll remember us no matter what or whatever. Yeah. Basically saying it's like, well, we're going to fight until we die if we have to. Like they're going to send an army against us, but we're going to do what we can. Which I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So Mike, you watched the latest Rambo, right? I think we talked about it. Yeah. That's all I could think of is because. Like, I know Rambo does it in the first Rambo where he sets up all the booby traps and everything. But, like, when they're setting all that up, I was like, he is Rambo 5ing this. I was like, he's got, and then there's the one part where he's like pushing like the giant tree branch back to lock it into place. And that comes back as a really cool thing during that fight, because where he had that hook, you never saw like where he attached it or what kind of mechanism he set it to. And the one guy with the mallet, he's chasing Conan and he like moves behind a rock or something, and he turns and he sees his helmet and he goes and hits it, and that like activates the lever that just like launches it into his chest and kills him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something about those 80s like fight scenes and shit like that you cannot do today and have the same effect, because you just can't. Like, you can't.
I don't know if it's the editing or like.
I think it is, because you see it coming towards them, and then the next shot is just them impaled.
Right.
You're just like, damn, like that's.
I don't know what they do, but I know. Exactly.
There's something about it that it's a charm. It's a staple of 80s action.
That's what I love. That's why I love like stuff like Terminator and just stuff from that era. Like, it's just so good.
Yeah.
We'll never replicate it.
No, and so they end up defeating all of Thulsa Doom's guys except for him.
Yeah.
And he runs away. Well, he tries to kill the princess first.
Yeah.
And then
Subutai saves him.
Yeah, he saves her because he pulls out another snake to kill her with. He must have just like a quiver of snakes that he just like uses as arrows. But so he goes back to his cult, and then Arnold Conan uses the princess to get back in to his castle, kills some of the guards, and Thulsa Doom is like giving like his sermon or whatever at the top of his
oh yeah, that's a great
palace.
scene. He's just like having like he's speaking out, and then Conan just like walks up behind him.
Yeah, he just literally just like walks up right behind him. And it reminds me of that that meme with Undertaker.
Yeah.
Where he's like standing behind that guy. Like, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, and then everyone's like, woo.
Yeah, and so he turns around and Doom's talking to him. And Doom, I could kind of sense fear in Doom.
Oh, 100%.
Because he's like, oh, fuck. Yeah. Because like then he starts trying to persuade Conan, like, oh, like, I am your father in all of this. Like, who better than me? Because, yeah. but he's saying to him, like, I made you who you are. Without me, you'd be nothing. And he kind of gives like that Joker Batman type of thing.
Yeah.
Without me, what are you?
Right.
And all that. And he's like mid-sentence, he is just like saying these things to Conan, and Conan takes out his father's broken sword and just starts chopping his head off. And I was like, God damn! Yeah. And he just literally just keeps cutting until he chops his head clean off, and then he throws it down to the people below.
And then roll.
Yeah, and then all the people toss their torches into the little pond there and denounce their allegiance.
Conan burns their base down, and that's the
he
end
burns
of the movie.
burns a castle down from the outside, which is brick and stone.
Yes.
So I don't know how that happens.
Like a marble,
but he burns it to the ground. Yeah,
magic fire.
The Crom was with him, so he just lit it on fire. So then he takes the princess back to. Well, we don't see it, but we assume he takes her back to King Osric,
and then at the end of the film, there's a teaser about the second movie.
Yes, where we have King Conan sitting on his throne with his beard and crown.
For another time.
Yeah, we get a Maz Kanata story for another time. So let's talk about.
Well, let's rate this one first.
Yeah, you're right.
I'd say that this. I'd probably put it at like a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. The score was a little goofy at times, but overall it was pretty good too.
Real quick, I want to talk about the score.
Yeah.
Something that I brought up. There's at the very beginning of the movie, it's not the opening track, but there is, I think it's the second scene after the opening. The score is called Riddle of Steel / Riders of Doom. Riders of Doom was used in the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time trailer for like the GameCube back in, oh Jesus, when was that? Early 2000s.
Which game?
Ocarina of Time.
That was the N64. That was it was probably like 97, 98.
Yeah. So they used that Riders of Doom, which is when they're entering the village and killing everyone, which is that's a good part of the score.
Yeah.
The Anvil of Crom, which is the theme for Conan, and Riders of Doom are two of my favorite scores in the movie. But I just want to bring that little link up between the two that Riders of Doom was used in. But yeah, go ahead. You were mentioning the score.
Yeah, I mean, it was good other than some goof. Like, there were some goofy parts in it.
No slide whistles, though. So that's a good thing.
there wasn't. We didn't. I don't think we talked about that last
Thanks,
time.
Elliot Goldenthal.
But yeah. Oh, I liked it overall. 7 out of 10.
I'll go next. I mean, it was all right. I don't know. I don't know if I really care about the source material all that much. I mean, but the movie wasn't bad, so I'll give it like a 6 out of 10.
I will probably I agree with what Shawn said. It could be cut down a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly could be cut down.
You definitely feel its length at times. But yeah, overall I would say 7 out of 10. It was a good, comparatively, it was a good movie with Arnold in it. I would recommend that to anyone who is a fan of Arnold, who has never seen that movie.
That movie.
I should say that movie.
That one.
Yeah, that one. Conan the Barbarian. So I guess
the better movie. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that yet.
Well, so 7 out of 10. Yeah, it's a fine movie. It's worth the watch. It's one of those movies where it's just one of those iconic. You hear about it, and you're like, well, I gotta watch that.
Yeah, it's worth. I would say, like, if you've never seen it, watch it. I don't know if I'll ever go back.
I'll probably go back and rewatch The Barbarian.
I can.
I was gonna say, yeah, please, because I don't want to.
Conan leads a ragtag group of adventurers on a search with a princess to get a MacGuffin they need. Conan is
for
promised,
another MacGuffin.
Yeah, Conan is promised the revival of his beloved Valeria if he does this, and yeah, clearly dark undertones are present whenever she's explaining that. Whenever they put the horn on its head,
it's MacGuffin after MacGuffin.
It really is. It's not. I mean, like I didn't hate this one.
I don't hate it. I'll tell you what the big difference is, and Shawn and I watched these at his house. And I, out of curiosity, was reading the back of the box. And I said, oh no. And Shawn goes, what? And I was like, this is PG. And he's like, oh no. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, when we go from R to PG, it's bad.
Yeah, it's clearly toned down. There's a little bit of blood and violence in it, but not nearly what there was in the first one. And
which is
they must have really realized that like kids are gonna love this.
Well, like, and that's the thing that I said. I think that it was toned down to PG because the first movie, while it's good, a lot of parents weren't taking their kids to watch Arnold Schwarzenegger slaughter savages.
Right.
So I think that what happened was they're like, hey, Dino, the movie did fine, but we didn't make a ton of money off of it. And he was probably like, I need the kids to go watch this movie. Give them a princess. Make it PG, and did all that. Which is, it's something that happened in the 80s a lot where they took a franchise. Happened with RoboCop. You took RoboCop, which is a fucking gory movie, and then your third one is PG-13.
Yeah.
And it's awful. And, like, it's just one of those, I don't care. Make a movie for the sake of making the movie. Don't make the movie because you want people to go see it and like do your vision. Do your vision and do justice to the vision that you had.
Toning it down some isn't like the worst part. It's just that you jump so far.
Yeah.
You know.
And it doesn't have the same feel.
Yeah.
There was not that this isn't adventurous, but there was a different type.
There's something different
about a darker aspect to the first one.
Conan's motivation is like entirely different in this.
Yeah.
Like the revenge of the first movie, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But in this one, it's just like, oh, I want to get, my girlfriend back.
Yeah.
Essentially. He's not like super in stake with the adventure, where in the first one he's like, this is my entire purpose. But the second one he's just like, yeah, whatever, I'll bring the girl and find the crystal and find the horn, and I don't really fucking care.
Yeah.
Basically.
Like it's almost like if you took that's the thing. It's so much darker in the first one, and his motivations are darker. It's like if you took Rambo after like Rambo, like the fourth one, and then you made like a Kindergarten Cop sequel to that, where it was like Rambo had to like babysit a kid, and it's like there's a lot of comedy and it's rated PG.
The pacifier was
yeah,
Rambo.
essentially, yeah. But like he has to like kill like government agents, and then he ends up at a McDonald's in the ball pit, like fighting like 3 guys or something. Like that's what it felt like to me.
I would totally watch that though.
Yeah, but you had something that was just so dark, and when I think about that movie in my head, it's so much better than this, because it just kind of took that gargantuan hero set out for revenge and blood, and then you're just like, oh, I get to babysit so this girl can get her shiny rock.
There was
like, that's it.
we mentioned some goofy score from the last one, but this one had a moment that was horrendous. The fight. The one woman, she has like a tail as her costume, and she shook her ass and it went like like that sound effect. I was like, did that actually just happen? Like, did that seriously just happen now?
And it's all the same composer.
Yeah.
Basil Polidorus is the composer for these movies, and it's all him.
Like, that was like, oh, okay. I mean,
that's probably part of the PG.
Yeah, that's gonna be part of the movie then. I mean, there's so much about this that doesn't make sense. Why did the woman first try and kill Conan instead of just like asking him to help her with her quest? And then whenever they're going on the
she
quest,
tries to kill him or capture him.
Yeah.
And then she's just like, hey, you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, whatever. Like, you didn't have to try to kill me. You and Wilt Chamberlain didn't have to try to kill me to convince me to do this.
And then when they're going on the quest, Arnold just like knows that what's his name?
Akira?
Is it Akira? He just knew that he was going to be being eaten by people. He just like shows up and saves him. And, just like stuff like that. It's like, why?
No, like that's what I mean. There was just so much poor, like, this was just kind of thrown together. And everyone has a cool ass name in these movies. You have Conan, Akira, Valeria, Bombata, and then you have Jenna, the princess. Jenna. That's the best you can come up with. Ooh, you put an H in there. Doesn't make it any cooler.
Yeah. And like in the first movie, there were compelling likable characters, at least. Like Subutai and Valeria, where you liked them as characters.
Yeah.
But in this one, I really don't care for Bombata, and Malik is probably the worst character ever.
I hate Malik. I hated him.
Yeah, he's like the king himself.
Subutai was actually a good character.
He was a good character.
And you and I both mentioned that. We're like, where the hell is Subutai? Like, who's Malik? Why is he here? He's annoying. Why is he here?
He's really bad.
Yeah, he was just an annoying character that I did not care for to have him there.
They tried to do, like, comedy. Like, the scene when Conan's getting drunk and Jenna wants to learn how to sword fight or whatever, and he's like slurring, and he's doing the fucking Jar Jar thing he's like Dello Felicates, you know, he's fucking switching up the letters in the way he's saying it. It's like, why is this happening right now? Like, this isn't fucking funny.
It's not, like, that's the thing. It's also not funny. Like, the comedy in the first one was funny, but it was kind of dry. Like, when he punches the camel, you're like, like, you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, that's kind of funny, but Jesus Christ.
That's again.
Yeah, he has to punch the camel gun. He's like, sorry for what happened last time.
Why does Malik know about that?
Oh, yeah.
Because Malik's like, doesn't that animal look familiar? And I'm like, you weren't there for this.
Yeah.
And then he's like, hey, sorry for what happened last time. And then it spits at him, and then he punches it out again. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That part was at least, like, kind of funny, but it was very forced. Like the director was like, remember when he punched the camel in the last movie?
That was funny.
Yeah, like in the first one, whenever Subuntai's like, you're too big to be a thief, you know, that stuff is funny.
Yeah.
Because he just punched out a camel and he's being annoying.
Yeah.
But in this one, it's just like, all the comedy just doesn't work at all.
No, there are a lot of things that don't work in this movie. The villains, namely.
Yeah.
They're not... The villains aren't compelling enough to give a shit about us.
They're really just kind of
about us for
there
rooting
to be in the way.
Yeah, for us to root the hero on. Like, at least Thulsa Doom, you're like, man, kill this motherfucker. Like,
right.
This dude is an asshole. But in this movie, you're like, oh, Tamaris is just kind of a bitch, and Bombada's a dickhead.
Yeah, and like the cloak wizard.
Yeah, who's played by the guy who was the pilot that Indiana Jones fights in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's the big guy with the whip in Temple of Doom that Indy fights. And he was in The Last Crusade too, but his name is Pat Roach. And he's a big guy. He was like a wrestler, I'm pretty sure. He was like a old-time professional wrestler. Like in the 50s, maybe. 50s and 60s. And but he's a big guy. And he's always in these roles where he's got to fight. And in this movie, he had way too much prosthetics on for you to even be able to tell that it was him. Especially when he's in the man-ape costume.
One bit of comedy that did kind of work was whenever they're like, he's smashing the mirrors. And they're like, no, don't attack over here. And then he turns around and like stabs through the one. But that scene whenever the cloaks like show up and they're like circling him, that looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the fight, I didn't care really about his fight with the wizard monster.
And the wizard monster has like weird motivations too, because he like captures Jenna and then he's like, ooh, sleep for 1,000 years. And I'm like, oh, okay. But like, that's it. Like, he just dispatches him pretty quickly.
I think he didn't want anyone to touch the gem or something.
Which is a good idea.
Yeah.
Considering all things considered.
Yeah.
But maybe the wizard was onto something and we just didn't listen to him. But yeah, and then he turns into like a weird like pterodactyl, like animated pterodactyl when he carries Jenna away.
Oh yeah, that was so strange. I forgot about that.
He does some weird shit, and then like when everybody wakes up and Akira's like, she's gone, and they're like, where do you think she went? It's like, maybe the big solitude of or Fortress of Solitude floating in the middle of the lake. Maybe that might clue us into something. And then, so they go in and fight him, and then it all starts collapsing because they found the gem. And then it does a Raiders of the Lost Ark where it starts collapsing in on itself after they take the
And then we get two of the worst green screen scenes ever in.
Rowing to and rowing from.
Yeah, that was bad.
They were real bad.
And, so then they're like, I don't know, is she a queen? I don't know what she is.
Tamaris? Yeah. She's like the aunt to Jenna.
Yeah. So they're like, the queen's people are coming to kill us. Why? And
why?
Bombada's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. He's just like, Yeah, because they come to kill Conan, and then they all have to fight them. And then he's like, yo, you gonna say something to him? Or, he's like, Yeah, and Bombada's just like,
Yeah, and then they come and attack them again after they get the horn. Yeah. And Bombada like traps them. I don't know.
And we get discount Christopher Lee as another wizard.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And I, when he and Mako are having their wizard battle, no magic or anything. They're just seeing who can close or open the mouth of the thing that they're trying to escape through. And when Mako gets down and he's going like,
yeah, he's
like and doing like all these like grunting and everything. Like I thought he was gonna start doing Three Stooges noises because I thought that's where this movie was going, where they were gonna be like, and like the other one was gonna be like, whoop whoop whoop, you know, doing all this, like seeing who could out stooge the other. But like I thought that was gonna happen because I was like, well, I mean, we're already here. This is already goofy as hell. Might as well just follow through.
Yeah, and then it culminates with them reviving their god, who is like a pretty like woman, and then they put the horn. I think it's a woman, and then they put the horn on, and it turns into a fucking monster. Yeah, I guess it might turn into a monster because Jenna isn't sacrificed.
Yeah,
but yeah, the monster looks bad.
Yeah, it looks like a Cronenberg type of creature.
It's just kind of like
yeah. And it has no like distinct features. I mean, it has like webbed feet for some reason, and like wings. Did it have wings? Yeah. I thought.
Yeah, it was.
I don't remember.
But all of the shots are either like a foot or the torso with the arms flailing like a 50s monster, because I don't think that they built a full suit. That's like clear because they never showed like a full on shot of it.
Yeah, and
it just roars. Like, the camera just tilts and it roars. Yeah. And that's all you get.
You never really see it doing anything. It just kind of like the place is shaking
and then they run up to it and it just like bats one of them off or something. And it's ridiculous.
But,
and then they rip the horn off.
Yeah.
And then it bleeds. Which it was... They cut it a couple of times and it was bleeding red. And then they rip the horn off and it just bleeds green.
Yeah.
And I was like, well... I'm like, stay consistent with the blood color at least. But like, yeah, they rip the horn off and then it like dies, and then the
Jenna becomes the queen and
because the queen dies.
Yeah. I think the monster kills her, but she enlists the help of all of the Conan warriors.
Andy Richter,
the
other guys.
except for Conan, because she wants to marry him and he's like, nah.
Yeah, so he's like, no, I gotta go find Valeria. And it's like, dude, no one is bringing her back.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even have a body to revive. She burned up in the last movie.
And then we once again get another teaser for a third film that ultimately does not happen.
And it never happened. It was supposed to be called Conan the Conqueror, which was also supposed to come out in 1987. But Arnold Schwarzenegger's contract with Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group ran out before then. I think it ran out in 85. And Arnold also couldn't do it because he was busy shooting Predator. And Conan the Conqueror fell, and it was eventually made. But it wasn't Conan the Conqueror, it was Kull the Conqueror, who is also in the Conan lore, but he was played by Kevin Sorbo. And it's terrible.
Oh.
Everyone I've talked to,
I love Kevin Sorbo.
I mean, you might like it, but
maybe.
everyone I read or talked to about it, they're like, yeah, it's nowhere near as good as Conan the Barbarian.
That's sad. I love Kevin.
I mean, I kind of I enjoyed it enough, but it's an ultimately, compared to the first one, underwhelming. Movie.
It's definitely one of those. Well, I'll tell you this much. It was kind of like watching RoboCop and then watching RoboCop 2. Because I was like, oh, Conan the Destroyer, that sounds cool and all that. And, but then, like, RoboCop 2 was written by Frank Miller and directed by Irvin Kershner. And I watched it and I was like, I don't like this as much as the first one. I was like, why? I was like, this is supposed to be really good. Like, you have two titans of industry leading this, and it's not nearly as good as the first one.
Like Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wrote RoboCop 2. With Ed Neumeyer, I think. I could be wrong. I think he came back and wrote the third one. but he helped write the first one.
Hmm.
But Frank Miller helped write the second one, and Irvin Kershner, who directed Empire, my favorite Star Wars movie of all time,
I knew
directed that. And I was like, how is this bad?
Wow.
I watched it and I was like, I don't like this. Now, it's been a few years since I've watched it. Maybe I might watch it and be like, oh, this isn't that bad. But it didn't hit the same.
I haven't watched it in forever either. I don't even know what happens now that I think about it.
It just did not hit the same for me as the first one. And it might just be the way that Paul Verhoeven attaches his satire into movies like Starship Troopers and RoboCop. But so I guess I'll go ahead and rate Conan the Destroyer 5. It's okay if you just want to throw on an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in the background while you do something. But yeah, everything that we talked... Well, I mean, look at how quickly we covered this one.
Right.
There's really nothing that we're ogling about or anything.
I was uber checked out on this one, and I apologize.
Yeah, it's... But, we covered this in 15 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
There's really nothing that stands out. I can think of Conan the Barbarian and think of 16 different memorable moments. This is just kind of I remember them fighting the wizard.
I remember
that's about it.
That's it,
I remember the camel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say 5 out of 10 too. It's just, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay, but I definitely would recommend the first one over the second one.
Right.
In fact, you can watch the first one and never watch the second one. Because the second one, the only thing really tying it to it is Conan and the fact that he's still trying to bring Valeria back. Yeah. That's it. There's really nothing else.
If you take the Valeria part out and change Conan's name, it's just
Mako's there, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go 4 out of 10 because I didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just there.
It's a movie. It was made.
It's a sequel. It definitely is a sequel.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, all right. That was Aaron's recommendation, and we have another one on deck. I do believe it is my turn.
It is your turn.
Yes.
I'm pretty excited about this one.
Wow.
I've been sitting on it for a little while. So, let me just look up something real quick.
If I recall, he did say that he thinks I have it on DVD.
You do have it. So, we don't have to worry because we can all find it on HBO Max.
Okay. All right.
So, this movie is
it
2009.
2009.
Oh, no.
It is a film directed by Zack Snyder.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. And it is going to be Watchmen.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Going along kind of with the comic theme we've had a little bit here. This is probably my favorite superhero movie. I haven't watched it in a while, so it's another reason why I want to revisit it. But
yeah.
I know that Mike has not seen it.
No. Yeah.
And I think it's really good.
I saw the beginning once.
If it is long, so I'm only going to recommend the one film.
Yeah.
If you're feeling angsty enough, there's a series that came out this year, or 2019, Watchmen, which is also very good, which I recommend. But it is 10 hours.
You must watch it.
It would be 10 hours of your time, so I'm not going to force you to watch it. I do recommend
Let's
it.
Let's just do the movie for
now.
now.
If you have it done, we can talk about it. But yeah, I'm not going to force you to watch it. But that is mine. I've been sitting on that for a little while.
I haven't watched that movie in a while.
So I'm pretty excited about that one.
Yeah.
I only attempted it once. And it was a drive-in. It was
you got to be...
It was 3 or 4 movies overnight. And it got to that one. I'm like, yeah, this is nap time.
Yeah, you got to be in the mood for it. It's a long movie, but it's certainly worth it.
It is. It is worth it.
All right. Well, that was our show this time. Thanks for watching and listening. I hope you guys liked our conversation about both Total Recalls and the Conan movies. We enjoyed talking about them.
Arnold movie marathon.
Yeah.
Let us Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
Let us know what you thought. in our comments, and we'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Later.